Ah Chong didn't like to share a bed with anyone else, to be honest. Ning had said that he was someone who was careful with himself, but it was hard to say if that was true. Ah Chong was in doubt, though, over why someone who was supposedly so careful with himself would fall asleep on someone else's bed so easily. Ning certainly didn't think of himself as a visitor. He seemed to be very comfortable sleeping here. And that wasn't all. He, in a daring move, had also enveloped Ah Chong in his arms. Ah Chong found his position uncomfy. He was slightly taller than Ning and Ning was hugging him like he was a child. He pushed Ning away, but then the other man's arms came around him again 2 seconds later. He pushed them away again, and then they snaked up again. Fuck. Annoying. He used to be the one whose arms got numb after his partner slapped on them. Today, though, he was the one laying in the embrace of someone else. That was a bit nonsensical. Ah Chong realized that he wasn't really averse to it, though, as it felt nice having someone spoon him. It's not my arms that will get numb anyway. And so he stopped moving around. He tucked his head into the crook of Ningyu's shoulder and slept. When his consciousness was blurring, he vaguely felt the sensation of Ningyu kissing his forehead. It was fatal-light. Maybe it was an illusion, Ah Chong thought. It was kind of like what a mother in a TV show would do to her child when trying to lull him to sleep. On this night, this kiss seemed to not have any romantic connotations. It was more like this. Two people without a home happened to come across each other. He gave the stranger a cigarette that would help him while loneliness away, and the stranger returned the favor with a gentle, polite kiss. This kiss brought his consciousness to a place of safety, and he fell asleep soon after. He had a long, long dream. It was a very bizarre dream. He should have known who he was, probably, but that dream was filled with too many scenes that seemed real and fake at the same time. Sometimes he felt like he was someone in the dream, while at other times he felt like an observer, a translator. He started to lose track of what day and what time it was. He was floating in a river, following the flow of the water. The water was warm, and it felt good. Ah Chong sensed that he was curled in on himself. Relaxed, he sighed and fell asleep, like a baby sleeping submerged in amniotic fluid. But then the water became scalding a while after, and a voice was waking him up. Someone patted Ah Chong on the head. He opened his eyes, and in the distance was his shifu, who was sitting on a frail boat, looking at him. Around him, people from all walks of life bathed in the river, naked. Ah Chong suddenly remembered. This was during the year he became an adult, when his shifu had taken him to India. In the dream, he was naked. A rope was fastened around his waist. The other end of the rope was tethered to his shifu's small boat. On the boat, his shifu asked, "Chong, look up. Where is this?" In the water, Ah Chong looked up. He looked at the buildings in front of him and voiced his realizations. "Shifu, that's the Mrigadawa. We're in the Ganges River." Shifu nodded. "Rest. We have not arrived at our destination yet." Ah Chong closed his eyes. He listened as his shifu recited sutras in his murmur. He didn't dare to really fall asleep. The water started to become hotter and hotter, to the extent of making him feel uncomfortable. He felt like the water was about to boil him alive. He felt uncomfortable. The voice of his shifu reciting sutras did not calm him down, but made him anxious instead. Feeling uneasy, he swatted at the scalding hot water of the Ganges River with his palms while submerged in it. He was afraid that he would be punished by Shifu, and so he never opened his mouth and said that he was feeling uncomfortable. It was after a long time when Shifu finally said, his voice devoid of inflection, "Open your eyes." Chong opened his eyes. Numerous funeral pyres stood everywhere he looked. The river separated the land into two. The people at the shore cried and howled as they transported dead bodies up to the pyres and burned them. On the Ganges River, a piercing, foul-smelling odor permeated. It was the bloody stench of burned, dead bodies. The flames were bright. Under the sky, the cruel cremation went on. Chong thought that he had forgotten, but his memories were honest. Uncontrollably, his eyes started to prickle. A wave of grief surged in his heart, and he, unexpectedly, felt a desire to cry overcome him. At that moment, he didn't know if everything was real or fake, a dream or reality. After all, he didn't know why he was still moved by the scene he had witnessed that year, even though so much time has passed since then. The people at the upper reaches of the river bathed as the people downstream burned corpses at the shore. Despite the scalp-numbingness of it, his Shifu made him watch from the beginning to the end. Shifu asked Chong, "Do you want to go up to the shore?" "Go up to the shore?" Chong paused. He shook his head slowly. Shifu said, "By the time their bodies become burnt tar, their souls have already gone to the afterlife." Chong, dumbfounded, looked around at the flames that surged up to the sky at both sides of the shore. The sky was dark and gloomy, with a dirty yellowish tint, as if it was covered by an unclean layer of fog. However, those flames that burned bodies were so piercingly bright. They were like lights in a mortal world that pointed to the underworld. Chong watched, not turning away, feeling confused and lost. He had just been a teenager. He hadn't even figured his life out, and yet his Shifu had forcibly pulled him into this hellish place where people died and went to the afterlife. At the next second, Chong saw someone. He wasn't sure at first, but he looked carefully, and at last confirmed that this person was San Jie. She was different from everyone else. The other bodies were wrapped tightly and in many layers before being carried up to the pyres. But San Jie was not wrapped up in anything. She lay there, naked and filthy, as she was propped up atop a pile of firewood. From afar, Chong saw this woman that he hated and loved at the same time. Her eyes were open, and her gaze was empty and apathetic. She gazed at his direction. Those were eyes that belonged to a person who had not died in peace. "No!" Chong screamed at the person who held up his torch. He screamed until his voice was hoarse and his strength was lost. He swam forward with all the energy he could muster, but the other end of the rope was tied to his Shifu's boat, tethering him to the water of the Ganges River. He would never be able to go up to the shore. The flames swallowed Sanjie's eyes. In the dream, Shifu pulled on a rope and called out his youngest disciple, who had lost control over his emotions, to come back. Ah Chong looked back, and in Shifu's gaze he saw solemnity and respect, but also a command to stop, and he was doing now. And lastly, a barely perceptible hint of pity. Shifu dedicated himself to attaining enlightenment, despite practicing Hinayana Buddhism. He was a man with great wisdom. He taught him to accept death and learn to live. Humanity worked their whole lives for riches and power, and they lived in mediocrity to the end. All of it seemed insignificant. Ah Chong watched as Dream Him cried until his face was streaked with tears and filled with grief. The pyre flames burned brighter and brighter at the shore, coming together until they filled the sky. The flames surged toward them from the shore and engulfed the Ganges River, and slowly they burned to the small boat Shifu was sitting on. Ah Chong, in a daze, watched as the flames in his dream swallowed to Dream him and his Shifu. After the boat was destroyed, Shifu's appearance shifted, and now he looked kind, benevolent, and dignified. After the boat was gone, a lotus throne materialized beneath Shifu, who floated up to the sky and pulled Ah Chong out from the Ganges River that was swallowed by bright flames. They drifted in the air, and Ah Chong watched as Dream Him flew into a beautiful hall. Shifu was gone. The hall was grand and opulent. On the throne sat a man who wore a thin layer of clothes. He seemed to be the owner of this place. Ah Chong couldn't see this man's appearance clearly, but he saw the magnificently clothed servants who surrounded his king, and the delicacies piled up as high as the mountains. Ah Chong thought and thought. He tried to recall the scene in front of him that was somewhat unfamiliar, but at the same time familiar, like he had experienced before. Before he could make anything out of it, Ah Chong saw a menacing eagle swoop down to his right from behind him. Panic, Ah Chong got up to dodge it, but at this moment he realized that white wings jutted out from where his arms were supposed to be, and he was flying. In his dream, he flew. While he flew into the hall, Ah Chong looked down at the floor so shiny his reflection could be seen, and realized that he had turned into a dove. Ah Chong landed on the left shoulder of the man sitting in the front of the hall, while the eagle which chased after him perched on the man's right shoulder. The eagle was about to peck Ah Chong, but he dodged it. In front of him, this man, whose face was still blurred, raised his arm to protect his dove. He asked the eagle, "What are you doing?" Unexpectedly, the eagle with a vicious gaze opened its mouth and spoke. The eagle said, "His dove is my food. I've been starving for a long time. Return my food to me." The man said, "As the king, I swore that I will treat all living beings in this world equally. How can I allow you to kill a living being in front of me?" The king? Ah Chong looked at the man in surprise. The images in the dream were illusory and real at the same time. He gradually came to realize that this was a story that he had heard before. Why did I become the protagonist? The eagle was not intimidated in the slightest. It sneered sarcastically. It is natural for the strong to prey on the weak. If you don't allow me to eat, and I end up starving to death, how will you explain that? Am I not a living being? Is your promise to treat every living being equally set in jest? The man fell silent for a while. He said, I can offer you something else instead, but you can't eat this stuff. Tell me, what do you want? Ah Chong sensed that dream him, in the form of dove, was shaking. He knew that something was about to happen. The eagle said, I only eat flesh that was freshly cut. Flesh that is still bloody and warm. The king looked around the hall. Everywhere he looked, everyone shrunk backward, as if they were afraid that the king would open his mouth and ask them to sacrifice themselves. Ah Chong wanted to say something, but the dove could not speak at all. He flapped his wings and thought, why can't I speak unlike that eagle? Sure, Ah Chong heard the king, whose face was blurred, say, as I've sworn to deliver all living beings from torment, I should not kill other living beings. If that is so, I'll offer myself up in place of the dove. Hand me a knife. Hand him a knife? The eagle was not satisfied. It said, I'm an animal, but I won't take advantage of you. If you want to save the dove, you should give me an equal amount of raw flesh. The king agreed to it. He had his servants carry to him a scale. He smoothed his hand down Ah Chong's feathers before setting him on one end of the scale. Ah Chong watched as the man took off his shirt and started to cut flesh from his arm. Ah Chong saw blood, heard the shocked exclaims of those people in the hall. Ah Chong started to not understand. What kind of dream had he entered? His headache worsened. He watched as the man cut from himself piece after piece of bloody flesh and tossed them onto the other side of the scale. But then something strange happened. The man cleaved from himself one piece, 2 pieces of flesh from one arm, 2 arms, then set them on a scale, one after another. He went on until little flesh remained on his body, but the scale was still tilted. Ah Chong stood on the scale, dumbfounded. He didn't understand. Was he really that heavy? Why did the scale refuse to budge? Ah Chong watched as the man cut flesh from himself again and again. He didn't know if the man found it painful, but he started to feel pain. He watched in the dream. Watched carefully, meticulously, in this hazy dream. As Ah Chong felt like he was about to suffocate from the pain, the man's face finally materialized clearly in his eyes. Unexpectedly, it was Ningyu's face. Ningyu was watching him. Chong shivered under that gaze. At that moment, he felt fear so potent that his wits left himself. After cutting too much flesh from his bones, Ningyu lost his strength. He stumbled as he tried to stand. It was as if he was trying to crawl onto the scale and offer himself up in Chong's place. Chong heard the eagle ask Ningyu, who had turned into a skeleton, "You cut your tendons and broke your bones just to save a dove. Do you regret it?" The bloody skeleton collapsed in front of Chong, his eyes seemingly blood red. He said, laughing, "I don't regret it." Both sides of the scale started to become even. But then Chong's consciousness gradually drifted far away. He couldn't see this dream clearly now. The only thing remaining in his mind was the image of Ningyu's broken body and his blood-tinted proclamation, "I don't regret it. I don't regret it. I don't regret it. I don't regret it." He had said that. He felt no regret. And yet Chong was shaken so badly when he heard that. The words reverberated and echoed in his mind, so terribly noisy and loud. Chong gradually left that dream. It was evident that he had woke up with a start. This dream was messy and long, orderly and disorderly at the same time, and filled with shocking and terrifying scenes. After waking up, Chong discovered that he was drenched in sweat. He opened his eyes and noticed that the sun had long been up. His eyes itched. It was because Princess was lying belly down beside him, licking at the tears that lingered to the corners of his eyes. Chong shied away. There was no one beside the bed. This was the first time he felt his heart become empty after waking up alone. That dream was not real, but somehow without reason. It made him feel scared. Chong spaced out for a while. He reached out and pulled Princess into his arms for burying his face into her back. He waited till his breathing calmed down to get up. His throat was dry. He wanted a glass of water. After heading to the living room, he saw Ningyu, who was wearing a jacket. His back was facing Chong as he adjusted something on his belly, head lowered. Chong had no idea what he was doing. Looking at this man's back, Chong thought, why did this man turn out to be my karma? He had only passed by me. He was just a passerby in my life. Cat in his arms, Chong was lost in his thoughts for a long time. He remembered how dream Ningyu looked, soaked in blood while cutting his flesh to feed the eagle. He remembered Sanjie, whose eyes were wide open as she was burned. He remembered everything that he had seen. He didn't understand why he had had a dream like that. It was familiar, yet unfamiliar, close to him, yet distant. It was real, it was fake. It was hard to distinguish between what was true and what was not. Even the cat he was holding now and Ningyu, who stood a few steps away from him, seemed like something in a dream. Ah Chong watched as Ningyu turned his head toward him after hearing some noises. He said, "Oh, you're awake." Ah Chong nodded. "Good afternoon. I tried to wake you up once. You seem to be sleeping well, so I didn't rouse you for a second time," Ningyu said. "Lunch will be ready in 10 minutes. I made pork rib soup today." Ah Chong could only nod. It was only after a while when Ningyu turned over somewhat awkwardly and walked toward him. Only now did Ah Chong notice that Ningyu's belly was jutting out, as if he was pregnant. "What are you doing?" Ah Chong was really doubting if he was in a dream right now. "What happened to your belly?" Ningyu eyed him and averted his gaze. "Oh, in my belly is a big treasure." Still holding the cat in his arms, Ah Chong thought, just what is this person plotting? And then Ningyu walked toward him and he was pulled inside the room and to the side of the bed where they sat down. Ah Chong couldn't have it. He asked a second time, "Just what happened to your belly?" Ningyu tried to act calm. He said, "Oh, nothing. I'm just pregnant with your child." Ningyu was a bit nervous. Ah Chong could see that. Hear that. His eyes were red. His ears were red. And he looked embarrassed. Okay, if he was trying to be funny, he had succeeded. When this handsome man put on such a show, he looked awkward no matter what he did. It was truly funny. Ah Chong obligingly laughed. The more nervous the other was, the more relaxed he felt. "Oh," he went with it. "Really? Oh, you don't look like someone who can get pregnant. How many months has it been? Have you given her baby a nickname?" Ningyu's gaze was fixed at him became more confident. He reached for Ah Chong's uninjured left hand and placed it on top of his tracksuit jacket. He said, "Try pulling it down." "Oh," Ah Chong said. "Are you getting a C-section? Has it been enough months before you give birth?" Ningyu closed his eyes. He too couldn't help but laugh. "It's been enough months. I'm not pregnant with Nerja, am I? Pull it down and see." After pulling the zipper a few inches down, Ah Chong hesitated. He stopped and changed the topic stealthily. "You got the picture when you tossed the coin last night. We can't date today." Ningyu's expression froze for a moment. He then said, "Yeah, my luck's bad." Ah Chong found Ningyu's expression funny. He continued, "On the days you don't get the one, you can work hard on wooing me. If you do well, I can seriously consider if I want to date you. Think of it. Think of it as applying for a job. If I'm satisfied, I'll hire you. How does that sound? Fair, isn't it? Love one day at a time. Sleep together one night at a time. If we grow to be tired of it, one day this game will end, and we'll never see each other again. With that, we won't hurt each other. A coin brought us together and shaped our destinies, and everything started because of this coin. So let's blame all our troubles on it too. Isn't that right?" After listening to him, Ningyu unexpectedly appeared to be quite happy with that. He snapped his fingers and agreed to it. "Great! Thanks for giving me a chance, boss." "You're welcome," Ah Chong replied politely, wearing the expression of an employer, but speaking in the tone of a boyfriend. "That's what I should do." Ningyu seemed to be very confident. His gaze was clear, and his expression honest and unbothered as he pestered Ah Chong. "Pull it down and have a look. See if I'm doing a good job at wooing you today. Ah Chong tilted his head. He had no idea what Ningyu was brewing. He pulled a zipper down hard, and then some objects as big as an adult man's palm came rolling down from inside the jacket. Jellies. They bounded up from the inside one after another, like candy spilling from a jar. What spilled out were the colorful anticipations of childhood. Ah Chong froze. He forgot to catch those jellies that fell out from Ningyu had stuffed them into. He took a careful look, and those were the pretty siege-long jellies that he had never gotten to have during his childhood. Ningyu couldn't manage to catch some of them, and they rolled down onto the floor. At the moment those jellies fell out, Ah Chong suddenly had this illusion that actually what came out of Ningyu's open-up belly were moments of the past that he had lacked. And Ningyu wanted him to open his belly up and take whatever he wanted without needing to be courteous. Ningyu asked him softly, "Look, are these the right ones?" Yes. At that moment, what did he feel? Ah Chong said in his mind, "I'm touched." Not so much that he wanted to cry, and he was not going into hysterics either. It wasn't that exaggerated, really. The cruelty of the adult world had taught Ah Chong long ago to toughen up and be an observer of the world. The rules of the real world mandated that one should keep out of sight their ridiculous feelings and emotions, and learn how to analyze their gains and losses rationally, stoically, like a man. What could he give me? Ah Chong thought. He seems to be willing to give me anything. Then if I wanted him to cut his flesh off, would he do it? Ah Chong looked up. He suddenly asked, "Ningyu, have you ever regretted giving up on your life and coming here for me?" He paused briefly after that. "Or rather, will you regret it?" "Huh?" "I asked you, would you ever regret meeting me and coming here for me?" Ningyu was stunned for a while, and then he unexpectedly blushed. Ridiculous. Was there any reason for him to blush? Ah Chong couldn't figure him out. They had slept together on the same bed before? Had sex with each other before? So how did Ningyu manage to turn every single time they talk into the start of a budding romance? Ningyu held a jelly in one hand and started to rummage his pocket with his other hand. After some time, he fished out his wallet and withdrew a card. "Why would I regret it? I told you I'm serious," Ningyu stammered a little. I don't have much money. I've only been working for 1 year. There's about 50,000 bucks inside. Think of it as a betrothal gift. What I mean is, I don't know what I should give you, but I'm serious. Have been serious from the beginning and will be to the end. No, I'm not trying to guilt trip you with this stuff. I'm fine with whatever you do. I mean, I'll take good care of you anyway, and I'm a fast learner. I can take care of you properly." His voice became smaller and smaller as he spoke, as if he had lost his confidence. He was holding the card in one hand and a jelly cup in another. His stature was awkward in a dumbly comical way. Ah Chong picked the card from his hand with 2 fingers and looked at it. He said with a laugh, "This is less than what I earned in a month. A poor man isn't a good match for me, so you gotta work hard and earn money, my friend. Ningyu sighed. He was feeling embarrassed too, he whispered. I will. I'll earn a lot of money for you and I'll let you handle my money too, is that okay? Achong laughed. He turned the car to Ningyu and turned his head sideways to look outside the window. Opposite of him, Ningyu felt like the atmosphere was awkward. Pinching the bank card between his two fingers, he sighed affectedly and bent down to pick up the jellies that had fallen down to the floor. He felt like Achong wasn't as euphoric as he thought he'd be, and so he tried to make his situation less awkward. The jellies came today in the mail. I thought of ways to give them to you. Wasn't this pretty funny? Achong pulled on his arm. Ningyu turned back. Achong's gaze was pinned on him, hard, heavily even. That gaze was so serious, Ningyu could only stop smiling. Ningyu, Achong asked a second time. Will you regret it? Achong didn't know why he had asked that, but he wanted to. He was someone that had lacked many things in his life. He didn't want Ningyu to regret the choice that he made today. He was somewhat confused. Was he asking Dream Ningyu? Or the Ningyu standing in front of him right now? The Ningyu that was holding a jelly cup carefully? Ningyu paused. He looked up, brow furrowed. That really bright ray of sunlight illuminated one half of his face. One of his eyes shone impossibly bright under it. Ningyu said, I won't regret it. Achong felt his breath hitch. He asked, for the third time, will you regret it? Ningyu didn't ask Achong what he wanted to say through his question that came from nowhere, nor did he ask what he was supposed to regret. Ningyu seemed to sense something too. His grip on the jelly cup gradually tightened. The breeze traveled in, warm and damp. It was so quiet, Achong felt like he could hear both their heartbeats. Their hearts beat in the same rhythm, and to this beat, two souls gradually neared each other. Achong heard Ningyu say softly, No, I won't. Believe me. Just like you, I do everything of my own volition, and I'm happy. I don't regret any of it. He repeated it again. I don't regret it. Ningyu's voice was actually very soft, but his words crashed head-on into Achong anyway. The same words again pushed Achong into that dream where there had been no misgivings and no regrets. A dream that wasn't real. Achong released Ningyu's arm. His hand reached down to hold Ningyu's palm. Both their hands were not smooth and delicate. Those calloused palms belonged to two men. But the person he held onto was real. Achong laughed. That's what you said. Ningyu nodded. Yes, that's what I said. Ningyu, the early riser, had pulled the curtains to the side. The light shone in from outside the window and on their faces. The fragmented lights of the city of angels were like the shards of a broken mirror. They scattered on their faces and their bodies, prickly and slightly painful. Some of those shards broke skin, while some others turned into nutrients. From the pain, something new blossomed, as if they were giving a warning. You must become a better version of yourself. This was the first time Ah Chong found himself growing to like the swelteringly hot paradox of a city. There were no angels with wings in the city, probably, but a god must be residing atop the clouds. Or maybe a Buddha. Up there, they would have a quiet corner where memories were stored too. Love is strange. Some people end up crumbling down because of it, while some others melt because of it. Some people end up neglecting everything else in pursuit of it, while some others end up losing themselves. But Ah Chong didn't possess any of those strange emotions. What he felt was because of this unconditional trust, and also because of Ning Yu's kindness and earnestness. He was slowly being reconstructed. Something new seemed to grow inside his body. This was strange. This was his first time experiencing something like this. It felt like he was falling in love for the first time. Ah Chong laughed. He looked at the jelly cup Ning Yu was holding, and he suddenly felt euphoric, like he must do something right away. And so he reached out and touched Ning Yu's thoroughly reddened ear, saying, "You've narrowly passed the test today. Come on, let's be lovers, boyfriend." Ning Yu hadn't managed to react. The topic had changed so fast. Huh? Ah Chong spread his arms and gazed at the young man in front of him with a big grin on his face. "I said, let's be lovers. What's with that ha? From now on, if you feed me a jelly cup, you'll get a Sichuan flavored kiss. Extremely profitable bargain, clearance sale. Here, I suggest that you move fast, hesitate once, and you lose a kiss. That's a huge loss." That instantly made Ning Yu laugh loudly. The two of them sat on a bed surrounded by sunlight. Before feeding Ah Chong the jelly cup, Ning Yu leaned closer and broke the rules. He kissed Ah Chong, his boyfriend, today. He kissed Ah Chong, his boyfriend, for today, with a grin on his face.